My name is Carlos Negron. I am the president of the ASCE Dallas branch Transportation and Development Institute. It's one of many institutes within the Dallas branch. We are happy that you are here. We are so proud to continue this series. And I am happy to introduce Michael Cooper, who's here with us. He's with Ardurra. He is their Texas group leader and practice director. Michael Cooper currently serves DART as their PMOR program director and represents the joint venture of WSP and Ardurra for the DART Silver Line program. Working in past for both the owner and general contractor, Mr. Cooper has dedicated himself to project achievement within the design and construction industry for the last 43 years. Mr. Cooper's knowledge and experience provides a quality combination of hands-on proficiency in the public and private sector, managing transportation, transit rail, civil, building, and industrial projects throughout the U.S. and overseas. In the most recent past and local projects, Mr. Cooper has provided lead owner representation roles representing not only DART singularly, but also Trinity Metro, TRE, Trinity River Bridge replacements, Trinity River follow-on improvements for the Tex Rail, and streetcar realignments for Rock Region Metro Transit Agency in Little Rock, Arkansas. Prior to working directly with the owner and for Ardurra, Mr. Cooper's background has consisted of laborer to executive roles with general contractors and design and engineering firms, beginning with Morrison Knudsen, the Walsh Construction Company, CH2M Hill, Herzog, Austin Bridge and Road, Urban Engineers, and now Ardurra. Help me welcome Mr. Michael Cooper.
Well, thank you and good morning. I'll try to go as fast as I can. Carlos and I talked, and Carlos says, "So what's your theme?" And I said, "Well, what's a rail job look like?" He says, "Oh, come on, let's get something a little bit more sexy." And so I said, "Well, building a rail job is like, the rail is kind of like the icing on the cake. So you better get the cake right. It better taste good." So somehow we came up with making and baking in the Texas sun. So that's long story short. So anyhow, so thanks for the welcome, and let's move forward. All right, so today I'll go through a little bit of introduction about the job, the project on a global scale. I'll look at the utilities, the walls, bridges, stations, track, maybe offer a conclusion, and maybe have a little bit of time for Q&A. Let's move into it. All right, so the DART Silver Line alignment runs from DFW IA, from Terminal B, all the way to Shiloh Road in City of Plano. It's 26 miles. It's actually 26.7, but who's counting? You can see the circular areas in here. This is where we actually deviated off of the freight rail that we're sharing track with to allow us to build some stations in particular locations. And then, of course, we're adding now to the Silver Line basically a 26-mile long hike and bike trail. 10 to 12 foot wide, pedestrian bridges, all H10 loading so they can run emergency and ambulances on it. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then just kind of congratulations. The Sunday before we opened, which is October 25th, was the grand opening, as you know. Sunday before that, we did a little thing out in Carrollton. It wasn't little, it was kind of big, and where we brought in everybody that worked on the job in the past and currently, and their families, and let them ride the train, and had a bunch of music and speeches and food and whatnot. So anyway, here's your welcome to the Carrollton and the Silver Line. So you didn't get the balloons, but you got them now. Okay. All right. So couple milestones. So the notice to proceed was issued in I think January of 2019, and the design started right away. First concrete pour, which was a crash wall just to get some concrete in the ground, was in 2020. And then major construction began in all disciplines. We'll get into some of those details in a little bit, and design is still underway. Going back to my statement relative to what makes a rail project, well, sometimes you got to destruct before you can construct. So this was a White Rock pedestrian, old 1906 historic bridge that we went out and tried to sell it, and for like $1, right? And everybody saying, well, we'll take it, we'll take it. And I said, okay, but you got to move it, you got to cut it up, and you got to construct it. And then they said, well, maybe that's more than we can handle. So anyway, so we had to move the rail. We used a SPMT, that's a self-propelled motorized transit system, and to remove this White Rock Trail. So it was kind of a big event. It's in the city of Dallas, and there's a golf course around it. And so all the golfers came out in their golf carts and set up a bar and all that kind of stuff and watched us do this thing. So it was pretty nice. Um, and then in 2023, we completed our first bridge, which is in the city of Addison, which is Midway Bridge. I got a picture of that coming up. And we started receiving trains because part of the Silver Line project is also includes all the manufacturing of the trains, eight different DMU units. We got all trains here, and to do the necessary testing and the proofing of the trains, you have to load it up with sandbags. So we had a sandbag party, and we all loaded up these trains with sandbags. And then we tested them actually out on the TexRail, one of the bridges that were already built that had like a 3.2% grade. So the max conditions, trying to emulate what we're going to be building at Silver Line. And then 2024, major construction activities, all the storm drain, franchise utilities, all that stuff you don't see, it was pretty much done, and as well as several bridges. And then, of course, as I mentioned, 2025, we finished the track installation and started our segmental testing, systems integration, and final testing just in time for the VIP ribbon cutting on October 24th. And as I said, October 25th, we went into revenue service. All right, so some facts. $2.1 billion. Sounds like a lot of money. It is, right? But it's well worth it. And I can say that this project actually, as opposed to other similar projects around the country, was actually right in there, not competitive, maybe even a little less expensive. So that's good news. One of the things we're most proud of is that to date, this just a couple weeks ago, over 6 million man hours out in the field with a quarterly rate incident of 0.62, as opposed to national average of 2.4. So we're very happy of that. Our OSIP, Owners Controlled Insurance Program, the carriers of that or the underwriters, they're very, very pleased. And we got everybody home. And that was the biggest reward from this job is keeping the people's safety and they knew they were safe and they were looking out after one another. All right, so overall, I said 26.7 miles of rail. That's actually 281,000 lineal feet. Remember, this is a double track job for the most part. So do the math, that's 53 miles of track. 36 bridges, 10 crossings, 750,000 square foot of noise or sound wall, betterment walls. Got some pictures of that as well. And then one of the most critical items on this job, we had 4 railroads, active freight railroads, that we had to keep running constantly while we're building the new track. A lot of effort there for coordination. And then also just the coordination of design with all the regulatory agencies and the railroads, the PE agreements, all the amendments to existing agreements we had with railroads, whatnot, and to obtain their approvals took some time. And so that is very, very critical that we establish good relationships with the railroads and with like TxDOT and North Texas Tollway and municipal district or municipal whatever, Department of Water, utility, and TMWD. So there you go. And then just the regulatory agencies that were always on top of us and tracking us, and we had due reports. Mr. Tipton knows about all this stuff, right, John? Yeah, so working with FAA, FTA, FRA, the Corps of Engineers, and then the franchise utility owners, which was about 17. The main ones were the Explorer, Encore, Sprint, AT&T, and a host of others. And then communities and special groups, community meetings, keep the communities and the public well aware of what we're doing, where we're going to be as best we could. And then with the cities, every city their own little animal, if you will. I don't mean animal in a bad way, but just different characteristics and different ways of doing their business. And then finally, I just threw this one in here last night. One of the main issues, we had 26 miles of guideway. Well, we had, I don't know, roughly 100 miles or 100 different right-of-way acquisition packages. And sometimes that got in the way. You didn't know what you're going to acquire until you got some of your line and grade documents done for the rail and what we need to do to move the existing franchise utilities out of the way. So anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so again, what's a rail job? Okay, what's part of the cake that makes a rail job? So we had major storm drain utilities, public utilities, up to 72 inches of new storm drain. And consistently along both sides of the alignment, 12 inches to 24 inches to 3 foot storm drain all along the railroad to deal with new flood control, new regulations that the city came in with, and had to upside our pipe in many areas from old worn out pipe, class 3 pipe, to upgrade to a class 5 pipe. And then we also had water lines that we had to relocate and run bypasses on to keep people with water. I just mentioned this because after all the testing, coordinating with the water districts throughout the alignment, just the scheduling of them to do their inspections, sometimes didn't really match the schedule that we wanted. So again, trying to have that collaboration with them and that working together night and day, 7 days a week, whatever made sense. That's what we tried to do to accommodate the third-party owners and the public utilities. All right, and then traffic signals. In order to do this job, initially it was a single track all the way through. Some of it not used, especially through the city of Dallas, but through Capel, Carrollton, Addison, Richardson, and Plano is all there was existing track out there. So we had to move that track, and we went to a double track where it was just a single track before. So all new traffic signals, all new temporary ones just to keep building until we got into permanent ones and the permanent signals in place and up and running. And so again, to my next point, just a high level design just to get city approvals, and then also to schedule our traffic control plans, full closures, partial closures. And that was very much a full-time scheduling effort. And then again, I mentioned drainage. So we had all kinds of drainage. Well, I got some pictures of it, concrete pipe flumes, reline all the ditches, box culverts. And again, there's no rail on the job yet. So this is an example of a lift station we had to put in at Hillcrest in the city of Dallas, where we depressed the track or depressed the road so the track could go over it. And this is a lift station that we built. So there's some boring here. So that's storm drain. And then the picture on the right is the finished condition of that. And then the typical storm drain, you see this is 3 foot class 5 pipe. And then you can see some of the 72-inch storm drain. We also had force mains on this job, wastewater force mains and whatnot. But this is right under Coit Road. So we had to relocate all this water, or all this storm drainage, upside the storm drainage, mostly because we got a bridge going over it. And in order to fit that bridge and all the drill shafts where they needed to go, we had to do this pretty large and substantial relocation. So just some examples. We had quite a few of these. Here's another example, box culvert storm drain underneath track. Before it was a 5-foot pipe coming through. We put in twin box culverts to accommodate the new storm drainage and new regulations and whatnot. So again, there's no rail, right? And then the picture on the right is just another boring operation for some other storm drain out in the city of Dallas as well. So just a few examples. I use some of the most critical ones or complex ones. All right, so franchise utilities, as I mentioned, we had 98 utility relocation packages on this job. So in other words, we replaced almost every utility on this job. There was not one that I believe we could keep in place. We replaced Encore, AT&T, Atmos Gas, Sprint. We had 17 different franchise utilities that we had to relocate. And so I just kind of a little joke is how many potholes did we do? Anybody want to take a guess? No guesses? I would say over 100,000. So that's costly, it's time consuming. And then what happens with potholes, you go in at the very beginning when you're doing the design, you do your potholes. You think you got everything. 2 years later, 3 years later, in case of a long-term job, we go out there, those potholes aren't around anymore. So you have to almost pothole again. So anyway, so budgets are a pretty big item there. So you can see there's a cost of around $100 million for all these franchise utilities. And that whole sequence of franchise utility relocations probably is 2.5 years worth of work. A lot of that work had to be done before we could even start rail and even storm drainage. As you can see, 10 miles of new Explorer and Atmos gas. Then when we relocated a lot of that work, the old pipe was all asbestos, and we had to remove that. That was kind of unplanned for, but we had to take care of it. Just the design issues and clearances with right-of-way acquisitions. Everybody knows it's involved in any right-of-way acquisitions. You just don't go out to the Walmart store and say, I want that piece of property. Some of it has to go through eminent domain processes. Some has to go through judges. Some of them, all the cities are different on how they treat these acquisitions. So again, it was a critical right-of-way acquisitions that we identified early to get them in place as soon as possible. But yet it was a long, drawn-out acquisition process as well. Let's see. Then new agreements and amendments, of course, with franchise utilities. There's existing amendments and license agreements that need to be modified with the utility owners, in some cases with the railroads, the existing freight railroads, to get that in place just so we could start the work. And then just the scheduling of the cutovers with the utility owners. Once we got everything done, and it's really hard to schedule a job when you have a hurricane in Louisiana or Miami or someplace, and everybody from Encore heads there, and they may not be back for 2 months. And then when they come back, they got to take care of their regular business. So just making that happen and keeping control of your critical path and your schedule, it's a puzzle. Let's put it that way. All right, so this is one picture. That's it. Just an overhead utility relocation. Some cases we raised the utilities up. Some cases we moved them. Sometimes we put them underground. So I'm just giving you one example. You can all imagine the complexity there. All right, and then this is kind of my fun stuff, is retaining and noise walls. So we had basically every type of wall out here. One thing we didn't have in here, we had a shotcrete wall too, but your typical MSE walls, T-walls, soil nail walls, crash walls, and noise embedment walls. 750,000 square feet of noise embedment walls. I'll show you a nice little picture of those. So some of the lessons learned, especially just because of schedule delays when you start a project, it's just a wall. It's just a wall, right? But every city wanted a different color, wanted a different texture. And we put out polls. And so we get votes, who wants this, who wants that. And then the city would come in and say, no, this is what we're going to want. I mean, if you just put out just a whole bunch of designs, and then all these residents are going to just pick up a myriad of different ones. So we had to kind of force their hand and say, no, you can only have this kind or this kind or this kind. These sound walls, I'll show you a picture in a minute, but they are a special fabrication or manufacturing process. We set up a manufacturing plant here in town to build them. So they're cast in place, basically, or not cast in place, but they're cast in a mold. And then we sprinkle these wood chips on top of them that have certain sound absorbent materials. And this tree only comes, this type of wood only comes from South Carolina. So cut down a forest to build these walls, it seems like. But so I'll show you some pictures. And then just, again, back to just establishing in the time is of the essence. Time is of the essence when you build these jobs. So a lot of times you don't know until the very end, oh man, we should have worked harder on that. We should have got involved sooner on that. But this is one of those which kind of, we're not always control of our own destiny here. We're relying upon different jurisdictions or authorities to make decisions, or the public to make decisions. And that can just throw total curve in the way you plan to do the job. All right, so here's a T-wall. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with T-walls, but there's basically, they're very stout wall we use to support track and predominantly. And then see those columns in the background, if you will. I can't put my, and on top of those goes noise walls. So we got T-walls, we got noise walls, and those are all drill shafts at 30 to 40 foot down with columns, and then putting a noise wall on top of them. So the top of the wall is 12 foot above the eventual top of track grade, in some cases 15. So that's kind of a pretty expensive little solution there, but get it. And just some other type of walls. Here's a kind of a modified MSD with a reinforced tall footing, if you will, to protect from erosion and loads induced by the ground conditions on the right. And then another picture of the T-wall installation. They don't go fast. And here's a sound wall. Each one of those panels that are being hung right there, they're 15,000 pounds a piece. Typically they're 3 foot tall. You put them in, stack them on top of another. Doesn't sound that hard, but it takes a while because there's a lot of footings, a lot of leveling. Some are sound walls and some are just betterment walls that have no sound to them. But throughout mostly City of Dallas, Richardson, Plano, even here in Addison, Capel, and Carrollton, we had many walls as well. So some samples of walls. All right, so and bridges. So I think I mentioned we had 36 bridges. So a lot of these bridges were like brother-sister bridges. We can build one side, then come back in and add the other one. They were separate and independent. So in other words, when I say 36 bridges, might as well make it 52 because they weren't all built at the same time. So we had several different types of bridges. So we had where we had existing freight railroads, we had E80 loadings. So of course we had to have a more substantial bridge on that. And the train itself, the Silver Line train, only requires an E60 loading. And so we had your traditional drill shafts, and we did another bridge or another type of construction called auger cast piles. And if you've never heard of that one, you might want to look into that because that saved the heck out of our schedule. So in other words, one drill shaft might take a day. I was getting 4 auger cast drill shafts a day. And it really helped us on our schedule. But you ought to look at that. I got some pictures of it coming up. And then typical box beams, bridges, through plate girder type bridges where we had low clearance elements, and then the typical TXDOT post tension girders with metal deck. We had some box culverts and some arch bridges as well. And then we had one other bridge was a pedestrian bridge over Coit Road. If you all live out in that area, you know where that's at, and that took forever. But we got it done and opened up on October 20th of this year. And so anyway, total length of railroad bridges on this job, 22,399 linear foot. So a little over 5 miles of bridges on this job. Concrete spans, you can see, read the numbers, 12,846. Concrete, linear foot of concrete spans, and steel spans, 9,553. And then 3 architectural structures. And then we, as I mentioned earlier on, we had this new hike and bike trail going in. We got 7 pedestrian bridges on that. They're pre-manufactured, pre-built, if you will, weather steel bridge. And so we've got 6 have been built. We got 4 more going in or under construction now for phase 2 hike and bike, and then phase 3, there'll be 7 additional ones going all the way through Carrollton, Capel, down to Grapevine is what we hope. All right, so some typical bridge constructions in flood zones. You can see the picture on the left. This is one of those things we didn't really plan to use 2 cranes out here, but we had a weather event, and this is the Elm Fork of the Trinity River. They're in city of Carrollton, and we had this flood event and it started eroding everything away. So we hurried up and overnight brought these cranes in, got them all surfaced and on crane mats and built the bridge. We worked, I think, 28 hours straight just to make this happen because that we could not predict what that flooding was going to do or where it was going to go. Picture on the right is an example of an auger cast uh, pile bridge. You can see on the left, the auger bit, it goes pretty fast. And then on the right-hand side or in the middle of the picture, that's just an I-beam. So you drill a hole, sink the I-beam down there, pour it up with the grout slurry type of mix. The first couple we tried to do, we were having really a hard time getting that mix right, but once we got it, we just sailed. So anyway, it's a really nice project. And we actually were able to get E80 loadings on this. And then another bridge, this is over US 75, so a combination of box beams and TxDOT girder bridges. That's a mile-long bridge, City of Richardson, over by the City Line Bush Station. And then you can see on the right-hand picture, that's the girder bridge after it was completed over US 75, where we had to close down US 75 overnights for 4-hour periods just to build this bridge. I think it had 6 different spans on it. And then you see the Ardurra Hotel. For 1 month, I lived in the 3rd floor up watching this thing get built. So that was kind of fun. Anyway, and then guess what? The train on the bridge. Okay. So very nice. All right. So here's some of the architectural enhancements that were requested by everybody. In this case, this is the town of Addison. This is an arch bridge that we built, and you can see the bridge, the bents down below there. We're building this arch so we can install the box beams on top. And this is kind of a little arch bridge. The city of Capel. They didn't like. Some people don't like the looks of weathered steel. I don't know why. I think it's beautiful. But they said, hey, this is right next to the Beltline Road. We want something that kind of looks nice, so we did this as well. Put this little arch span in there. And then some other aesthetic embellishments. This is in the city of Carrollton. This is over Josie Bridge. So a through-plate girder bridge there. But they said, well, we don't like, again, like we don't like that color of that weathered steel. So we went in and added some columns and some programmable lighting and then a fake facade on both sides of the bridge. So it lights up at night. It looks really, really nice. And then, of course, landscaping all underneath it. But it beats the heck out of what was there before, which is a not grade crossing. So in this case, we were able to build a bridge, and so traffic throughfare should be a lot nicer now for the city. And then the picture on the left is just call it protective assemblies. It was basically hanging signs, height signs. This is over DNT. And then you can see a typical pedestrian bridge on the right, which again is this has got certain loading requirements so we can run ambulances on them in case somebody gets hurt out there. So we get a good first responders out there to take care of people. And then this is DNT. So we closed down all DNT at night, built a railroad bridge, and then we moved in pre-assembled the pedestrian bridge and moved it in with the SPMT over one night. And just some other samples of bridges. Box beam, you've all seen them, right? Pedestrian beam. On the right is White Rock Creek area. There's going to be a railroad bridge. Well, there is now on the right-hand side. And we had to basically stick build that bridge because you can see the transmission lines up above. So we had to use low cranes and basically a lot of scaffolding to build it. Couldn't call up Encore and say, turn the power off for 2 days, will you please? And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So it's just some other little puzzle pieces that you have to figure out. And then this is one of those auger cast drills, bents you can see, and then with some box beams. And then to finalize the deck, waterproofing over all pedestrian roads and any creeks or rivers as well. Stations, we had 11 stations on this job. So 2 at DFWIA, so 1 at Terminal B, which already was there. We just modified it a little bit. The North Station, which is still DFWI area, Grapevine area, Cypress Waters, Carrollton, 1 station in Carrollton with access to the Green Line by installation of an elevator, Addison Road, Dallas No Trail, Richardson UTD and City Line, and then Plano, 12th Street at grade, and 12th Street aerial to connect to the Red Line LRT, and then at Shiloh. All right. So just a couple pictures. I'm not going to go crazy on pictures. How many, how many have ridden their Silver Line? Show of hands. A few more to go, huh? So I'm just going to encourage you, go get on the Silver Line and you can see the final pictures. I'm just showing the build process, if you will. So basically starts off with gray beams, picture on the left, see Carrollton. And then 2 years later, you got a finish station. And here's, I'm probably going to get shot for this. How many architects in the room? Good. They're not my favorite crew right now, right? So when we start the designs on stations, everybody wants, there's arts and design budgets, and there's, oh, we want this, every station we want to look different. So I think they sometimes really get very creative and without great understanding what the actual costs are and the time it takes. And the fact that these are a lot of these elements, for example, that column on the left, that's lit at night, number one. It's a steel over a plexiglass panel, and it gets adhered. Uh, and so they've never been built before. So it took a long time just to get it approved, to get it built. And then you have no one's ever in the field have built one. So I don't know. Sometimes we don't have the craftspeople that are just that are used to this kind of stuff. And so it just takes a long time and a huge punch list process. And then picture on the right is another one. So somebody had this idea of Cypress water. It's all about the blue wave and the wind effects on water. So somebody came up with this epoxy compound. Looks really nice, when you do it inside environment, but trying to do it out in the field, you got dirt blowing and weather and all that kind of stuff makes it tough. Well, so we put this down and then water gets on it and it's like slippery as water or as ice. So we had to go out there and grind it and bush it down and try to fix it and get the coefficient of friction. And it really looks good from a distance or from an aerial view. You get down to it and you go, but it was very costly and very time consuming. And we still got to do some more work on it. And then some other stuff. Again, I mentioned we added 3 elevators. Some pretty extensive stairways and elevators on the job. This elevator goes to the Red Line LRT. We got those done on October 23rd, the day before the ribbon cutting. So it was sleepless nights getting this done. Crews working around the clock. And then I'll also point out the picture on the right. You see those lights? You see those diagonal light things underneath there? This is what I'm not complaining, right? But in order to replace that light, I have to take a lot of that stainless steel covers off. So you just don't go up there, pop it out and pop it in. And so I just say, when we do a lot of artsy things, excuse me, just what I call arts are just, I just want to build. I don't want complications. But when we're under design, let's really look at the maintenance costs and then bring in the operations groups early. So when they start looking at this stuff, they're going to go, wow, I'm going to have to add 5 people just to replace light bulbs on this entire job. 5 people to the staff. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But it's real. So I've learned that on TxDOT jobs. Bring the operations and maintenance people in early in the design. If you're not doing it, you should maybe think about it. And then again, another station. This is City Line Bush Station. You can see where we first started. Gray beams are in. We got the concrete deck in. We're starting the old traditional Dart traditional design that matches the red line station that's right next to it. And then this is more of a finished picture of it. Looks pretty cool when it's lit up at night. And then we get these little arches, these green looking arches in here. And those weren't the easiest thing to do. They look great on paper. It took some whiles. And then if you haven't read the Silver Line or the LRT red line, you can go up to the LRT station. And we just finished this station on the picture on the right. You can see some of the arts effect in the very background towards the right-hand side of the picture. This wavy thing, that's edge fencing. Um, as always in a lot of jobs, all of a sudden, manufacturers go out of business, or they don't get, end up in the queue and you can't get them the galvanizing done. And you go look, inspect the galvanizing, it's not good enough. Then you go back to the back of the queue again. And so, again, this is all about material procurement, making sure all materials in place and ready to build when you can. Because when you have all these other potential impacts, whether utilities or whatnot, you want to build somewhere, right? So a lot of times that takes you manipulating the schedule back and forth. The contractor is responsible to manage and mitigate schedule. It's our job too, as owners representatives, to make sure the job's getting done, all the materials in place, meets the quality and on schedule, and not being overbilled. So it's just important on a big job like this to get all your materials, your long lead materials, as soon as possible, and then shelter them accordingly. Just don't leave them out in the weather. So just some few lessons. Listen. Okay, now the fun part. So all these pictures you had, well, you saw some track. 26 miles of track, right? 11 spurs, chute flies, temporary and permanent to keep the freight rails running. Of course, long lead items, 6 to 8 months for crossovers, turnouts, and switches. And then again, coordination. I can't emphasize enough how much keeping freight railroads running while you're building. So much coordination involved. Okay. And systems, well, it goes with everything, right? Systems, PTC, systems integration, systems installations. I got some few pictures to show you. But these pictures right now just shows you we work rain. Track guys, they don't go home when it rains. They don't go home when it's cold. They don't go home when it's hot. They work 24/7 where necessary. This happens to be one of our first welding exercises we did out there by DFW area, and then bringing in a crossover on the picture on the right. See, it was early morning or just before dusk. All right, just some samples of the track out on the job. These are crossovers. A lot of crossovers keep so we can share track back and forth with one another, with the freights, with a northbound train or a southbound train or westbound train, eastbound train. So they're necessary. So a lot of crossovers. And so there's a lot to track. Don't get me wrong. And then here, for example, here's one of those work windows we had. I had 14 hours. We're coordinating with DGNO, BNSF, our rail, Silver Line Rail, and Fort Worth Western. Had 2 double diamonds to put in, new track for BNSF, our Silver Line Rail, plus new track crossing and rail for Fort Worth Western to keep them operational. It's 14 hours. So we stack people up. So you can see the picture on the left, that's putting in a switch, part of the double diamond. And you can see the picture on the right, where we got the tamper, the regulator, backhoes, a whole bunch of people working. So this was a huge success, coordinating with BNSF, because BNSF couldn't run their trains. Fort Worth Western couldn't run their trains. DGNO couldn't run their trains. So we basically shut everybody down. So we all came to agree together and said, can we make this happen in 12 hours? And we gave ourselves a 2-hour cushion, and by gosh, we made it. So one of the great successes. Nobody hurt. It's another thing. All right, and just some typical pictures of accolade crossings. You got your gates that go down with the trains. You got your signals, cantilevers. That's again for the train warnings, and then brand new traffic signals. Of course, the accolade crossing, brand new. And then some of the stuff in the signals. The signal houses. The picture on the left is where we're actually pulling the cable in. I'll be doing some measuring on it, and then on the right, we're starting our segmental testing, bringing out all the stuff, making sure it works, and it's works together with the house down the street, next house, a mile away or whatnot. And then I'll go real quick. I know my time is limited. So 50 at-grade rail crossings. I showed you an example 1. And these at-grade crossings, I put everything together, 10 to 12 weeks per at-grade crossing. Why should it take that long? It really shouldn't. But if you can't get a full closure, okay, and if you can't, you can only do partial closures, and you only can work in 4-hour windows. adds time. In other words, I can't work during rush hour traffic, right? I have to open up for rush hour traffic. Um, and just to pull new track, new subsurface, new utilities through this area, new systems work through the area. So I basically just, it averages out 10 to 12 weeks per crossing. So you got to get those started right away as soon as possible. And then again, just a high level coordination with traffic control plans, installing temporary traffic signals in advance, well in advance, keeping the active freight rails running, and then transloads agreement. If there's nothing else you can't do and you can't keep the freights running while you're doing a certain section, you set up a transload agreement where the train will park somewhere off the alignment. You go in there with semi trucks, if you will, unload the trains, then use rubber tire transportation to bring them to the customer that the freight owners usually port to. All right. And then just some on at-grade crossings. Just remember, it's not just the at-grade crossing where the train goes through. It's actually new road because we've changed the line and grade horizontally and vertically. And we have to come in and replace existing roads. And it's just a few things. Then we always got sidewalks and TDLR and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. And then that's pretty much my conclusion to this meeting. Sorry I went so fast, but I know you guys are setting up for lunch. And so I do have a few lessons learned, if I can, just real quick. DEIS, FEIS, it's so important that the right people are included in those. People of education know how to build things versus just a bunch of dreams. But it's a prolonged event. And then when you go to build, you better know, it's like, you better know your contract. You better know what the FEIS says, because if you don't, you're gonna get called out on it. And so that's the lessons learned that I use for all my guys. And of course, design, utility adjustment agreements, right-of-way acquisitions, quiet zones, and another thing to get started on right away. Stakeholders, know your stakeholders for each city that you're going to be turning your plans into, know what really makes them happy. And then risk positions and prioritizations. Always know what your ultimate risks are, your most critical risks are. I always like to say, I got to keep 5 top priority items. Always. And even today, even though we got the civil line open, we're still doing some work. I still have 5 top priorities. So anyway, those are my lessons learned in a nutshell. And that's all I got. Any questions? We got time.
Well, before we get into questions, and we have a gentleman over here, just one ground rule. Michael is the owner rep. He is not the owner. He is not DART. He can't speak to DART decisions. Just keep that in mind.
Yes, thank you. That's right. I have to be careful. Okay. Any questions?
Michael, thanks for the presentation. It was very good.
Thank you, John.
I have a question on the franchise utilities. I'm assuming they relocated their own facilities. How did you motivate them to stay on schedule?
Okay, so we took over relocating it. Basically, schedule would not allow us for all these third-party utilities to do the relocations on their schedule. We had to get in. So we did we did our own digging, our own, raceway installation. Sometimes they would still come in the cables, but that was a decision that was made in order to keep this schedule going. And then they'll come back in the license amendments agreements and work out the deal.
Cost of total project.
Sir?
Cost of total project.
Right now it's been shown as 2.1 billion. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned you had a lot of utility relocations.
Yes, sir.
What were some of the more expensive ones? Did you have any that were uniquely challenging or?
Well, yeah, the Encore relocation was pretty expensive. We actually upsized the pipe because they needed to expand on it. The pipe they had in the ground was 20, 45, 50 years old. And the complication with that was pretty expensive, right? And it was mostly bored, and it took a while, and really only had 1 to 2 crews doing it. The install was not that tough. but just the time it took and the effect it had to our schedule. Until that was in, I could not build anything, storm drain, until it was relocated, storm drain, any other follow-on activities. So that was always a problem. We found our way through it.
Okay, I got a follow-up on that
Uh-huh.
too. Then for utility owners, did you have any blackout windows for any specific utilities that it down electric peak season or usage?
Yeah. Hey, David, you can answer that question better than I can.
On the other expensive or other challenging ones, the, not a lot of everything was crossing except for two or three utilities, and that was Sprint. They had multiple ducts in there along with CenturyLink and Free, and they run longitudinally in the rail right away, and then Explorer ran the entire. Big dollar cost item was Explorer, $32 million in about 14, 15 different relocation packages, saying, hey, it conflict starts here, ends here. We're going to relocate this 1,000 feet, maintain this. That was all set up directly. A lot of cussing and discussing early on and tried to set up that design criteria by Dart Run.
Talked.
Got it.
Yeah, thanks.
Do we have any questions online that we can manage or answer? Go ahead and just ask your question. Oh, you want to ask a question?
I have a question. So now that the silver line is running, what are the significant challenges that are being faced currently, like with everything being in operation?
The operations challenges that are
Oh,
you guys are seeing.
that's a different group than me. I could make guesses, but I probably shouldn't. I think they got all their headways done. It's pretty well timed out now. It's just the maintenance. You got freezing weather that can come in and play havoc with certain things where your switches get stuck, your crossovers get stuck, but there's ways of heating those. And it's just keeping operations going and safely. And basically just keeping all the kids, the schools, and everybody outside the alignment, so the trains don't blow their horns, but also just keeping people safe. I think that's probably one of the biggest risks because it's brand new to everybody, right? And DART's done a great, wonderful job training, going to schools in advance for the last 4 years, saying, hey, it's coming, and just keep people safe and keeping people from walking across the track where they used to be able to just do it all the time. So that's what I would say, but you could probably, you could ask that question online. That'd be fine. It's a different group that's now doing operations.
I'm gonna add to that. So to your point, you had to get a lot of public involvement out there, right? You had to train the people to change the way that they were getting from point A to point B because something big and dangerous is now out there. Dangerous, maybe not the right word, but it's you have to make sure that everybody knows, hey, this thing is live now, and it changes the way that you're going to get from A to B, and trains, light rails, commuter rails, the incidences happen over time, and we want to mitigate those as much as possible. Um, I think we're done with questions, and we want to thank everybody for coming. Thank Michael Cooper.